Last night, I barely finished the account of events that led to the preaching of the first sermon. At one point, I said that Buddha took the journey to where the 5 disciples were staying on foot because he wanted to meet an ascetic on the way. And I did not elaborate on it. So today I will give some details of their meeting because it is worthy of note, or at least what Buddha said to that ascetic was worthy of note. Now, according to the commentaries, Buddha left the Bodhi tree on the full moon day of July, or as Mahasi Theodore suggested, he left about 10 days before that date. So when he went to Benares, where the five ascetics were living, he did not fly through the air. He did not go there miraculously. So he walked the journey, which was 8 leagues in distance. That means about 140 miles. So he walked. He went on that journey walking on foot because he wanted to meet the ascetic. So he was known to be a naked ascetic, Upaka. His name was Upaka. So when Buddha left the Bodhi tree and was going on that journey for some time, he met that ascetic. Maybe they met on a road which was a narrow one. So when the ascetic saw the Buddha, he said, "Friend, your countenance is clear and serene. Your complexion is pure and bright. In whose name have you gone forth? Who is your teacher? Of whose teaching do you profess?" So he asked these questions to the Buddha. So you look fine, you look calm and serene, and you look happy. So in whose name have you gone forth, and who is your teacher, and whose teaching do you like? Then the Buddha replied, "I am one who has overcome all. I am one who knows all. I am detached from all things. Having abandoned everything, obtained emancipation by the destruction of desire. Having by myself gained knowledge, whom should I call my master?" Now, Buddha said this in verse, and so the first what Buddha said was Sabba Vibhu, and the translation is, "I am the one who has overcome all." Who has overcome all means who is the Lord of himself. That means Buddha was not affected by what is seen, what is heard, and so on. That means when Buddha saw something or heard something, Buddha was the master of the situation. He could control his mind and no unwholesome states arise in him. So he said of himself, I am the one who has overcome all. And then the second word he used was sabba vibhu. I am the one who knows all. Now we see here Buddha declaring himself to be one who knew all, or one who was omniscient. The Pali word used here is a little different from the usual word. The usual word is sabbanyu, but here the word used is sabba vidu. Sabbanyu and sabba vidu are synonyms. They mean the same thing. Like in the word loka vidu, the vidu means one who knows. So sabba vidu and sabbanyu mean the same thing. Here the unusual word sabba vidu was used because Buddha was speaking in a verse, and so the rules of meter have to be complied with. So the rules of meter requires full syllable word here. So the Buddha used the word sabba vidu instead of sabbanyu, which is of only 3 syllables. Now it is important to note that Buddha here claims to be a sabba vidu or a sabbanyu, a knower of all. In some discourses, Buddha denied being a sabbanyu at all times. Somebody asked him whether he was a sabbanyu at all times or always, and Buddha denied that. So that means it was impossible for anybody, whether the Buddha or not, to know everything at once and to be knowing everything at all times. So that is why Buddha denied that. But many people nowadays took that to mean that Buddha denied omniscience altogether. But now we see that Buddha was claiming to be a knower of all. So we can say that Buddha did not deny being an all-knower or being a sabbanyu. And then he said, I am detached from all things. I am not attached to anything. Having abandoned everything, so Buddha has abandoned all mental defilements and obtained emancipation by the destruction of desire. So Buddha had eradicated not only desire but all mental defilements, and so he had obtained emancipation. Having myself gained knowledge, whom should I call my master? Or literally translated, it means, so having known by myself, whom should I point out? That means to point out as a teacher. So by this saying, Buddha was declaring that he had no teacher. In the next verse, Buddha was more explicit, because there he said, I have no teacher. One like me is not. That means there is no one equal to me. In the world of man and gods, none is my counterpart, or there is no one who can compare with me. So in this verse, Buddha said, I have no teacher, and there is no one like me, so I am the best of all beings. Now, here Buddha saying, I have no teacher, seems to conflict with the fact that he approached two teachers after he renounced the world. But we must understand that here Buddha meant that he had no teacher in this practice which led to the final deliverance from all mental defilements and suffering. Or briefly, he had no teacher in his quest for Buddhahood. So those two teachers could teach him to some extent, and their teachings are not helpful to him for his quest for Buddhahood or enlightenment. So in the case of reaching Buddhahood, he had no teacher. So he discovered the middle way by himself, and he practiced himself, and he got the best results of that practice. So Buddha here said, I have no teacher. Then the ascetic, his name was Upaka. So he wondered whether the Buddha had gained the arahantship. So the Buddha said, I indeed am the arahant in the world, the teacher with no peer, the sole Buddha, supremely enlightened, all passions extinguished, I have gained peace, nibbana. Now in this verse Buddha said, I am the arahant. Now in Pali literature and Pali suttas, we often find the word arahant. In its wider sense, arahant means just anyone who has killed the mental defilements, who has eradicated mental defilements. So the word arahant means what we call arahants and also the Buddhas. So here Buddha said, I am an arahant. And in the 9 attributes of the Buddha, the first one is arahant. So the word arahant can mean arahants who are disciples as well as the Buddha. But in its narrower sense, the arahant means the disciples of the Buddha and not the Buddha. And that narrower sense was used more frequently than the word in a wider sense. So arahant can mean the disciple of the Buddha who has eradicated mental defilements like himself, or it can mean the Buddha himself. But there is difference between the enlightenment of the arahants or the disciples and the Buddha, or in the eradication of mental defilements. It is said that Buddhas eradicate mental defilements altogether without any residue whatsoever. But the arahants can eradicate mental defilements, but they are unable to get rid of some kind of residue of the mental defilements. Not really mental defilements remain with them, but some residue or something like a smell of them remains with them. So Buddha is often compared to, it's not so good to compare Buddha with a beer bottle. So Buddha was like a beer bottle cleaned completely so that there is not any trace of a smell of beer. And the arahants are like a beer bottle which is empty, but in which there still lingers the smell of it. So that is the difference between the Buddhas and arahants. And the other difference is Buddhas possess omniscience, while arahants do not, and so on. So here Buddha said that I am an arahant, the teacher with no peer, so I am the best of the teachers. And Buddha said, I am the only supremely enlightened one. So that means there can be only one Buddha at a time. There can be not 2 or 3 Buddhas at a time. So here Buddha said, I am the only Samma Sambuddha. Now, the word Samma Sambuddha means, Samma means correctly, and Sam means by oneself. And Buddha means one who knows. So, Samma Sambuddha means correctly and self-knowing person. Self-knowing means know by himself and not having no teacher. So here Buddha said, I am Samma Sambuddha, and the only Samma Sambuddha in the world at that time. Now we just call him the Buddha, but if we are to use the full epithet, then we should call him Samma Sambuddha. And all passions extinguished, I have gained peace and nibbana. So Buddha said this. And then the ascetic asked him where Buddha was going and on what purpose. And the Buddha said, I'm going to the town of Kasi to set in motion the wheel of Dhamma. In the world of blind beings, I shall beat the drum of the deathless. So I'm going to beat the drum of deathless. So I'm going to Kasi to preach the discourse called setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma. Then the ascetic said, by the manner in which you profess yourself, are you worthy to be an infinite conqueror? He used the word Pali word jina. Now this ascetic was a disciple of a religious teacher who was known also as Jina. In the Pali books, he was known as Nigantha Nata Buddha. But in other faiths, he was known as Mahavira and also as Jina. So, so the ascetic thought that the Buddha would also be a Jina. A Jina means a conqueror. So he asked, are you worthy to be an infinite conqueror? And the Buddha said, those are the conquerors who, like me, have reached the extinction of kangas. Those who have reached to the extinction of kangas, like me, are real conquerors. I have vanquished all thoughts, ideas, notions of evil, sinfulness. That means I have conquered all unwholesome states. For that reason, Upaka, I am a Jina, a conqueror, a victorious one. So Buddha claims himself to be a Jina here, to be a Samma Sambuddha here, and to be a Sabba Vidu or Sabba Nyu, or an omniscience here. So we should note that. So Buddha met him, and when Buddha said this, the ascetic was convinced, but he may not have real strong confidence in the Buddha yet. So he said, oh, it may be so. And then he shook his head and, giving the way to the Blessed One, went on his journey. So he stepped aside to give way to the Buddha. Now, that meeting was very important for that ascetic. That is why Buddha went the journey on foot. After some time after meeting the Buddha, that ascetic fell in love with a woman, the daughter of a hunter, and he disrobed and he got a child. So after getting a child, he was his wife made jokes about him, and so after some time he got tired, and so one day he could take it no longer, and so he said, don't think that I am alone. Say, I'm an ex-monk, I'm alone. I have a friend who is called Gautama. I met him, say, a few time ago, and so now I am going to him. I will leave you behind. So he went out, leaving his wife and child behind, and went to the Buddha. So he met the Buddha, and then Buddha ordained him, and then he practiced meditation, and he became an anagami, non-returner. That means he reached the third stage of enlightenment. And then he died some time later, and was reborn in the pure abode, in the world of Brahmas. And he became arahant in that abode, or in that existence. So it was to benefit that upaka, that Buddha went from Bodhi tree to Kasi, say 18 yojanas away, on foot. So Buddha went on his journey, and they reached the place where the 5 disciples were living. And the place where the Buddha preached this sermon was called Deer Park. So it was a place where deer and maybe as other animals can roam about harmlessly, or a sanctuary for deers. And it is also called Isipattana. That means the landing place of sages. So it is said that many Pajjika Buddhas came from Himalayas to Benares, and they flew through the air, and they always landed at that place, and also they took off from that place. So that place was called Isipattana. Although it seemed like a forest during the time of the Buddha, nowadays there were not many trees, and just plains and fields found there. So at that place, Buddha was able to convince the five disciples of his having become the Buddha, and so they sat down and was ready to listen to what the Buddha had to say. So Buddha began his discourse with, monks, one who has gone forth from the worldly life should not indulge in these two extremes. Now, what are these two extremes? One is devotion to sensual pleasures, and the other is devotion to self-mortification. Now, why did Buddha begin with the statement of these two extremes? It is not explained in the commentaries, but I think that these two extremes are still fresh in his memory, especially the self-mortification one, because he had just got out of the practice of self-mortification and became a Buddha. So it was fresh in his memory, and also somebody who had been on a wrong path for some time and then discovered a right path would want to tell other people about the wrong path and the right path. So I think that is why he mentioned these two extremes at the beginning of the sutta, of the discourse. And the other reason, I think, is that Buddha had to be straightforward about these two extremes, because the 5 disciples were believers in the practice of self-mortification, and so they may still have confidence, or they may still have admiration for the practice of self-mortification. So if they still held such views, then they may not be receptive of his teaching he was about to give. So maybe he wanted to hit them on the head by telling that what you had been admiring is just another wrong way. So when they heard these two extremes, they may want to know, okay, these are two extremes, what is the right one? So Buddha gave them or talked to them the right one. So these two extremes, the one is indulging in sensual pleasures, and the other, devotion to self-mortification or self-torture. And these two extremes, the Buddha or the Bodhisattva practiced before he became the Buddha. So for 13 years, he followed the path of sensual pleasures. He was a prince, and he was surrounded by 40,000 women, and he said he was delicate, and he used the best clothes and the best perfumes and unguents, and he used the best food and so on. So he was leading a life of luxury during these 13 years. So he had actually followed or pursued this path of sensual pleasures for 13 years. But he did not get any nearer to his goal of becoming a Buddha. Then after that, he renounced that life of luxury and then went into the forest and practiced self-mortification. So he was going from one extreme to another. So the one is too lax, but the other is too rigorous, too painful. So he practiced these painful austerities for 6 long years, and it was only about 2 months that he got free. He has got free from this path of self-mortification. So during the time of the Buddha, there were people who believe in just enjoyment of sensual pleasures. They said the purpose of life is to enjoy, and to enjoy as much as possible, and to enjoy at every opportunity. It is no use wasting time on, say, that the world is full of suffering or whatever, because they said we do not avoid eating fish because there are bones in the fish. So according to them, the people should enjoy the pleasures, sensual pleasures, as much as they can, as often as they can, and that is the purpose of life. And the same view may be prevalent at these modern times too. So most people want to enjoy life or enjoy sensual pleasures, and I think in this respect the modern people are pretty much the same as those people in the long past. But Buddha said about this first path, the path of enjoyment of sensual pleasures. Buddha said this path is base and it is vulgar. Now, when describing the first extreme. Buddha used the adjectives base or Pali word hina, and then another word kama. So Buddha described this extreme, this enjoyment of sensual pleasures as base or inferior. And he also described it as vulgar. So vulgar means it is the act of village people, or it is the act of town people, it is the act of those who are not recluses, who are not monks. So this practice is described as base, vulgar, and I said the word Buddha used here is hina. Base or Pali word hina, and then another word kama. So Buddha described this extreme, this enjoyment of sensual pleasures as base or inferior. And he also described it as vulgar. So vulgar means it is the act of village people, or it is the act of town people, it is the act of those who are not recluses, who are not monks. So this practice is described as base, vulgar, and I said the word Buddha used here is hina. So in Pali literature, the word hina is used to mean base or inferior or low or despicable. That is why I recommend dropping the word Hinayana when referring to Theravada Buddhism. Actually, at the Buddhist World Fellowship of Buddhist Conference, I think, which was held in 1950, it was decided that people should drop this, using this word to refer to the forms of Buddhism prevalent in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. So here the word used by the Buddha is hina, and it is said to be vulgar because it is the act of, say, common folk or ordinary people. So the pursuit of sensual pleasures does not lie within the province of one who has gone forth from the worldly life. It is a concern of the town folks or village folks. And it is also described as a low and common practice, because enjoyment of sensual pleasures is not conducive to a development of sila, moral purity, or development of concentration and development of penetrative wisdom. Since they do not lead to any development in these spheres, they are said to be low, they are said to be vulgar, and they are said to be base. And Buddha also said that it is not the practice of the noble ones. So indulging in sensual pleasures is not the practice followed by the noble ones. So the noble ones here means actually the arahants. Now, a question arises. There were enlightened persons during the time of the Buddha and also at other times they were enlightened, but they were not yet arahants, and they led household lives, or they still led household life. They still had, say, children, had wife and husbands, and so on. And so, what about them? Now, it is said that they might enjoy the sensual pleasures to some extent, but their enjoyment is not as bad as that of other persons who had not attained enlightenment. So it is best to keep away from them if one is bent on practicing, say, meditation, bent on getting rid of mental defilements. And also Buddha stated that this practice does not tend to one's welfare. That means this practice does not give us beneficial results. So this practice is profitless. That means if you follow this practice, then you will want to indulge in it more and more, and so you will increase what are called mental defilements, especially greed or craving or lust and anger or hatred, and also delusion. So as it increases the arising of these mental defilements, they are not they do not tend to our welfare. In fact, they are profitless. So Buddha said that the first extreme is base, is vulgar, is low and common practice, and it is not the practice of the noble ones, and it is profitless. We cannot gain any profit from indulging in the first extreme. Now the second one is the devotion to self-mortification. Now you know about self-mortification. So that is inflicting pain on oneself so as to get rid of unwholesome mental states, so as to get rid of especially attachment or greed. And so people do different things to achieve that goal. See, some stand for a long time, and some put up their arm for a long time, and some do not eat at all for, say, several days. Or there are some who sleep or who lie down on thorns or spikes. And so that way they think that they would be able to get rid of lust or other mental defilements. And Buddha also practiced some of these austerities during the 6 years he spent in the forest. And when Buddha describes this second extreme, he did not say that it is base or it is vulgar. Buddha simply said that it is painful. It is not the practice of noble ones, and it is also profitless. Because the practice of self-mortification was very much respected in those days, and inflicting pain on oneself to get rid of mental defilements is not low or not base as the enjoyment of sensual pleasures. And so he just said it is painful, it is not the practice of the noble ones, and it is profitless. And also I think not to hurt the feelings of his hearers. He didn't say that it is base or it is low. Now, although this statement is very clear, that there are two extremes. One, the enjoyment of sensual pleasures, and the other self-mortification. It is open to misinterpretation. Now there are some people who say the practice of meditation is also self-mortification. When you practice meditation, you sit, and so you suffer, and sometimes you have pain, or you don't enjoy yourself, then you practice meditation. So the practice of meditation itself is self-mortification, and so it should not be followed or should not be done. Maybe they are going too far. Now, when Buddha exhorted monks to practice meditation, he did not want them to be lax. So Buddha always exhorted monks to be energetic, to be strenuous in their efforts. And so when you practice meditation, you have to suffer some discomfort or some pain or whatever. But these practices do not lead to increase in mental defilements, and so actually they lead to decrease or eradication of mental defilements, and so they are good practices, and so they are not to be construed as self-mortification. Now, Buddha exhorted his monks in one sutta, saying, "Therefore, O monks, you should thus train yourselves. Unremittingly shall we struggle and resolve. Let skin, sinews, and bones remain. Let flesh and blood in the body dry up. Yet there shall be no ceasing of energy, till that is attained which can be won by manly strength, manly energy, manly effort. Thus should you train yourselves." So you must make real effort to practice meditation and to realize what has been realized by the Buddha and the Arahants. So Buddha always praised monks who are energetic, who make effort to practice meditation. And so the practice of meditation is not to be construed as self-mortification. Now, let alone practice of meditation. Keeping precepts also involves some kind of suffering. When you keep the precept of not eating after midday, and you may feel hungry in the evening, so you have you have to suffer some pangs of hunger when you keep that precept, and keeping of other precepts also restrict your actions, and so you suffer in one way or another. And Buddha said in one of the suttas, "In this world, some people abstain from taking life, causing some physical and mental sufferings to themselves. They take up the right view of not killing, for which they have to suffer physically and mentally. These people, thus voluntarily going through suffering to keep the precepts at the present time, will, after passing away, attain the higher abodes of the devas. So they suffer a little here, and as a result they will be reborn in the worlds of devas. So some kind of suffering is involved in every good act. And so it is not to be construed as self-mortification, because here what Buddha meant is the kind of self-mortification which leads to nothing, which is profitless. So if it is with profit, say if it leads to growth in sila, morality or concentration or wisdom, then it is a good practice. In one of the suttas, Buddha said, monks, in this teaching, a monk after well consideration patiently puts up with cold, heat, hunger, thirst, attack by insects and reptiles, effects of wind and sun, accusation and abuses, painful discomfort which arises, painful suffering which is violent, sharp, unbearable, unpleasant, hateful, fearful, which may danger his life even. Beneficial result of such patient toleration of heat, cold, hunger, thirst, attacks of insects, insults, physical discomfort is non-appearance of taints, impurities, suffering and burning, which would surely make their appearance, which if not borne with patience. So Buddha here exhorts monks to bear with cold, heat and so on, sometimes violent, sharp, unbearable, unpleasant, hateful and fearful sensations which may even danger their lives. So even at the risk of their lives, monks are to practice patience. And in one commentary, it is said that an elder named Lomasanaga persisted in his meditation, practicing even when enveloped by snowflakes while sitting in the open round about the full moon of January, February. So about the time when it was January, February, he went outside in the open and sat down and practiced meditation, and then the snowflakes began to fall. But he did not broke his sitting. He just sat there and put up with the cold surrounding him. And he overcame the cold surrounding him without giving up his meditation posture, simply by contemplation of the intense cold of the Lokantarika region of the purgatories. That means when he felt cold, say when he was cold, he thought of the more intense cold that was in the hell called Lokantarika. So in that hell, cold was much worse than the cold here, cold from snowflakes. So if I were to die here and then were reborn there, I would suffer much worse. And so, thinking of the cold there, he was able to put up with cold when he was surrounded with snowflakes. So, when practicing meditation, we have to suffer some discomforts or inconveniences, and when we put up with them, we are actually practicing self-control, and so it conduces to growth in morality, concentration and wisdom. And in another sutta, Buddha praised of a monk. A monk meditates after making a firm resolution. Unclinging, I will remain seated without changing the cross-legged position until the taints have been removed. Such a monk is an adornment of the monastery and the forest, a valuable asset to the forest abode. So, sitting still when you practice meditation and suffering some pain or some discomfort is not to be construed as self-mortification, and so it is all right. And the Mahasi Sayadaw concluded by saying, thus comparatively mild forms of pain such as stiffness of limbs, heat sensations, etc. should be borne with patience without changing the original meditation posture. If possible, persistence should be maintained even at the risk of one's life, as it will promote self-control, concentration and insight. If, however, discomforting pains and sensations reach unbearable magnitude, the body position may be changed, but very slowly and gently, so as not to disturb mindfulness, concentration and insight. So it is very important. So we put up with pain as much as we can without changing posture, without moving. But if it reaches the unbearable stage, then we have to give up. So we may change posture when it really becomes unbearable. And even when changing, we do not change abruptly, but slowly, so as not to disturb the flow of meditation we are doing. So that is why when you change posture, you change slowly with mindfulness, so that you do not lose mindfulness. Now, there are some people, the misconception is not yet over. There are some people who say, when you contemplate on pleasant feeling, then you are following the first extreme, see, indulgence in sensual pleasures. And when you contemplate on unpleasant feeling, then you are devoted to self-mortification. So you are not to contemplate on these feelings, but just on the neutral feeling. So they said you should concentrate only on the neutral feeling, and that is not correct. Because in the Satipatthana Sutta, Buddha taught us to be mindful of whatever sensation or feeling is at the present moment. And he expressly said that when a monk experiences pleasant feeling, then he must be mindful of that. And when he experiences unpleasant feeling, he must be mindful of that. And when neutral feeling, he must be mindful of neutral feeling. So contemplation on pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling does not constitute either of these extremes, but it is a middle way taught by the Buddha. Now there is another misconception. One teacher says, when you practice meditation, you should be comfortable, and so you can move as often as you like. You can make changes as often as you like. So when there is a trace of pain somewhere, then you may change your posture. And if there is stiffness here, you may change your posture, because you should be comfortable. But that is also not wise advice, because if you change posture very often, you will not get concentration. And you know that even with your body still, your mind is, say, going from place to place, and you have difficulty in keeping track of your mind. So if you are making changes very often, and you cannot hope to get concentration, and so you should bear some discomfort, bearable discomfort, when you practice meditation, so as to get stillness of mind, or so as to get concentration. So this passage is open to such misinterpretations, and we are not to not to get such misinterpretations, but to understand it correctly so that we are on the middle way, we are following the middle way and not either of the two extremes. So these are the two extremes. Buddha said a person who has gone forth should not pursue. Then what about lay people? Should they or should they not follow these two extremes? To some extent, the first extreme, to some extent they may, because as lay persons, say, they cannot give up enjoyment of sensual pleasures altogether. But if they are practicing meditation like you are doing here, then it is imperative that you do not follow that extreme also. Because when you are practicing meditation here, you are like monks. Although you do not wear robes, you are practicing like monks, maybe better than some monks. So when you are meditating, like in a retreat, then you act like monks, and so you must avoid following the first extreme or the second extreme. But when you are out of meditation in your daily life, you may pursue the first extreme to some extent, but not too much. So you have to decide for yourself, say, which is not harmful to you, and which is harmful, and avoid which is harmful, and say, indulge in which is not harmful. So lay people cannot follow this advice altogether, but even if they cannot follow altogether, they should follow it as much as they can, so that they are not off the middle path. So these are the two extremes, which especially a monk should not follow or indulge in, and also which is to be avoided as much as possible by householders or lay people. And what is this? So after stating these two extremes, Buddha said, now I have known, so I have penetrated the middle practice, which gives vision, which gives knowledge, which tends to calm, which gives special knowledge, which gives penetrative knowledge, and which leads to final cessation of all suffering. So Buddha described the middle path or middle way or middle practice he had discovered in these terms. And so we will talk about the middle way tomorrow. So by virtue of having given respectful attention to this great discourse on the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma, may you all, or may we all, be able to avoid the wrong path, namely the two extremes, and follow the Noble Eightfold Path or the middle path, thereby gaining vision and higher knowledge, which will lead to the realization of Nibbana, the end of all suffering.